Mike, welcome to the CIO Zone.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure having you here at HIMSS. And tell our audience and our members a little bit about what your role is at Nuance and what you're talking about this week at the HIMSS conference.
My name's Terheyden. I'm the Chief Medical Information Officer for Clinical Language Understanding at Nuance. My role encompasses a variety of areas, both in terms of communicating Nuance's tools, techniques and solutions, as well as helping our development team incorporate technology that is focused on the clinician. If I was to summarize it in one line, it would be my passion is the clinician and enabling them to get the most value from technology. I think for the longest time what we found was clinicians didn't get the best possible experience because in many instances technology was designed without their input and their involvement. So I tend to bridge that divide, allow clinicians' voice to be heard within the engineering department, and equally to allow the engineering department to explain in clearly understandable terms what it is that is achievable today with technology and what's possible in the future, and trying to build a framework that essentially allows for that in the future.
So you're sort of, in a conceptual sense, voice recognition. As they speak, you turn that into verbiage that can be understood by the organization to create products and things like that.
Right. So I think Nuance as a company was originally founded around documentation and scanning, in fact. And as it progressed into the speech recognition, it's become very well known for the Dragon brand.
Absolutely.
The preeminent speech recognition solution that is, in many instances, behind much of what we interact with in terms of speech recognition technology, both on the phone, in our cars, and from my perspective, in the healthcare arena. And what we're trying to do is to bring that technology with additional components, so it's not just pure speech. I think the process of recognizing speech is fairly well developed at this point, but how can we add value to that at this point?
So the question that I've been dying to ask you has to do with Watson.
Right.
Since we're on the topic of speech recognition and what can be done with it after it's recognized. So I'm sure pretty much everyone who's around last week, and I'm dating this, knows about the Jeopardy match that was played between the Watson computer and the former champions from Jeopardy. And I understand that one of the outcomes of that is a relationship between IBM and Nuance. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely, and I can't tell you from my perspective how exciting that is. It builds on what we've started to do with speech recognition, which is essentially understand the audio and the voice and convert that into text. What Watson does is takes us, in fact, to a much higher level of comprehension. And from a clinical perspective, that's an enormously important component of delivering high-quality care. For clinicians, what we want to do is to deliver the best possible care to the patient at the time that we see them. But being able to do that is almost impossible because we're presented with a tsunami of medical knowledge that continues to overwhelm us on a daily basis. And whilst a number of years ago the requirement was to essentially keep up to date and be constant in your continuing medical education, our capacity to do that is now impossible. Watson says we're going to take all this knowledge and be able to apply it. And in the case of Jeopardy, what they did was not only beat Jeopardy players, but Jeopardy champions of champions.
Right.
And so they took it to the next highest level. They faced a challenge that at the time seemed insurmountable, succeeded, and the partnership that IBM has developed with Nuance is to essentially take that technology and commercialize it in the healthcare space. From a Nuance perspective, we bring to this party clearly the speech recognition.
Right.
One of the failings that I think we all saw with Watson was he didn't hear the answers. But I think what they did was they focused on the specific problems at hand, and we know that we can address those issues. But then we take all of that medical knowledge, we can amass that into a Watson-type engine and provide that as an interactive tool that can help guide and support clinicians in the delivery of the best possible treatment for you, the patient. Well, suddenly you've changed this whole equation and said, now I'm going to make this information available to you and deliver it at the point of care. No more going back and saying, gosh, did we forget? Oops, we forgot that. And now we can deliver it at the point of care. So for Nuance and for IBM, enormously exciting and really a quantum leap in the progression of the delivery of the highest possible quality of healthcare to patients at the time of the interaction with the clinician.
It's a magnificent application. Often we see technologies in search of a problem to solve, and this is a situation that is exactly the opposite. What a noble application.
Right. And I think, from IBM's perspective, one of the experiences that they had with Deep Blue, which we all knew but I think the result commercially for them was, well, it was interesting, but what do we do with it? And that was the genesis of the Jeopardy challenge. And in fact, when they first addressed it, there was a, what are you, nuts?
Exactly.
But they achieved it, and hats off to that team and the progression. And I've had the fortune of interacting with some of those folks and talking to them and seeing some of that. And I can't tell you, the first time I saw it, I was immediately excited by the application of that in a clinical perspective, because I know from a clinician's view of the world, my biggest fear, when I go to bed at night is, have I forgotten something? Did I fail to do the best possible thing for my patient?
Well, that's a very exciting marriage and collaboration. How far along are you with them in this? Is this already begun?
So the collaboration has essentially started. We've started the work to identify the teams, identify the specific projects. Clearly, with the Jeopardy success, IBM comes out on a high with that and says, great, we've fixed that problem. I think it's not lost on folks that Jeopardy is different to medicine.
Right.
And we have to apply that in the appropriate way. So I don't think this is an overnight, great, now we've got the, Dr. Watson for clinical care. But with the quantum leap that IBM made with their research and their activities, I think we've stepped a big proportion of the way towards delivering that information at the time of care. But there's much to be done.
Well, I would love to come back, and we're not finished yet, but I would love to come back and speak to you more as the project progresses.
I look forward to it.
And hear about some of the exciting developments along the way. And I'm sure there'll be some interesting, very pleasant surprises as you go through it.
I'm sure.
But getting back to Nuance for a moment, I know that independently of the Watson project, obviously Nuance has technologies that are assisting other industries and other specialists. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Absolutely. So the foundation of Nuance's healthcare experiences is based around voice and the conversion of voice in a variety of ways into clinical content. And for the longest time what we did was we converted voice into text. Well, our new innovation relates to understanding what people are dictating and converting that not into just the narrative, which from a clinician's perspective is fundamental building block of understanding of the patient. But from a computer perspective, computers they desire data. And between those two environments, we represent a challenge, a bridge that has been very difficult to fulfill. We've developed clinical language understanding, technology that takes the narrative and converts that free-form narrative and adds discrete data elements that are tied to a controlled medical vocabulary.
So this is, in a sense, going from a natural language to something that is technically structured.
Correct. And it doesn't lose the narrative. Importantly, we maintain the narrative. What we do is we enrich that document. This is an EMR, an electronic medical record enablement tool.